In this episode, we're tackling one of the most talked about civil lawsuits. That's Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni, Wayfarer Studios, its CEO Jamie Heath, and many others involved in the production of the movie It Ends With Us. Now, when it comes to misinformation, clickbait, rage bait, and keyboard warriors generally talking crap, this case has it all. Just a warning, there will be graphic sex references throughout. This is Fame Under Fire from BBC Sounds with me, Anushka Matanda-Dowty. Now, what you're getting is a factual breakdown of what's actually alleged.
The public legal battle between It Ends With Us co-stars Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni is headed to a courtroom.
Lively says Baldoni and his team continue to turn a case of sexual harassment and retaliation into entertainment.
A federal judge dismissed actor Justin Baldoni's $400 million lawsuit against his co-star Blake Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds.
Baldoni's attorneys launched this public website where documents relating to the case can be found. Lively is also expected to request a gag order after Baldoni's attorneys have been releasing materials to the public related to the legal battle.
They essentially want this case to happen just in the courtroom, not in the court of public opinion.
This is a very serious legal matter, not Barnum and Bailey's circus.
Then, all the things you want to know from an intimacy coordinator but are too embarrassed to ask. It's okay, I will do it. We are talking to the woman who wrote the rulebook on how to have safe, fake sex, and she's brought props.
That's a big banana. Oh yes, if you think of it's a lap cushion in the shape of a banana.
As always, if you've got questions, send them to me on social media or WhatsApp at +44 330 678 1114. That's +44 330 678 1114. Don't forget to subscribe to the BBC Sounds YouTube channel so you never miss a thing. Joining me now is our resident criminal defense attorney from South Carolina, whose birthday it is tomorrow. Welcome, Sean Kent.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Happy birthday to me.
Today we're going to age a few years because we're going through the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni lawsuit, which is like 139 pages long, because why would it be any shorter? I want to get into this. We got this requested while we were doing Diddy so many times. It's one of the most talked about civil lawsuits at the moment. The docket is longer than the Diddy trial, even though he was up against the federal government there. They file a lot. But Sean, I just want to get this key question out of the way for our new listeners. What is the difference between a civil lawsuit and a criminal lawsuit?
There's a bunch of complicated differences, but the simplest way to put it is in the civil lawsuit, you're looking at losing your money. In the criminal lawsuits, you're looking, and they're not lawsuits, in the criminal complaints, you're looking at losing your freedom. And then the other big difference is the burden of proof. When we say burden of proof, the person who is accusing you. So in Diddy's case, it was the United States of America accusing him. So to win their case, they had to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. So there was just no doubt. So when you're trying to put somebody in jail, you need a higher burden of proof. On a civil lawsuit, Blake must prove her lawsuit by a preponderance of the evidence, which basically means, did this stuff, was it more likely or not that it actually happened? So she has a lower burden than if she was trying to put Justin in jail. So those are the two big differences.
Okay, so Blake filed this lawsuit, this civil complaint in December 2024, and then an amended version in February 2025. It's against Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, and Wayfarer Studios, and others who worked on the film. Her allegations include sexual harassment, retaliation, defamation, and others. Now, we've reached out to Justin Baldoni and his lawyers, who are also the lawyer for Jamie Heath, for a statement, and they referred us to Baldoni's legal documents where all the claims are denied. Their lawyer, attorney Brian Friedman, called these claims false, outrageous, and intentionally salacious, and said Lively sought to control the film and her public image. Now, Sean, before I jump into the factual allegations of this lawsuit, I want to talk a little bit about how they started. They kick it off with a quote from Justin Baldoni, who's being sued, his TED Talk that he gave.
Are you confident enough to listen to the women in your life? To hear their ideas and their solutions, to hold their anguish and actually believe them, even if what they're saying is against you? And will you be man enough to stand up to other men when you hear locker room talk? When you hear stories of sexual harassment, when you hear your boys talking about grabbing ass or getting her drunk, will you actually stand up and do something so that one day we don't have to live in a world where a woman has to risk everything and come forward to say the words, "me too"?
Now, the reason I brought that up is because last week we spoke about the Drake lawsuit where he's suing Universal Music Group, and they kick that lawsuit off, Drake's lawyers do, with a quote from Lucian Grange, who is the CEO of Universal Music Group. You work on civil lawsuits as well. You're a broad attorney, so you do criminal defense, civil lawsuits. Are you now writing things knowing that they're going to be read by the public? And do you think that's why these quotes are being included? Like, what's the purpose of that?
Absolutely. And that quote, with everything we do, whether it's a trial, whether it's a lawsuit, almost always want to have a theme. I can promise you during his depositions, during his trial, they'll be bringing that quote back up to say, you said this is what you believe, and these are the things that went against it. This is the public face you put on, but you did this, and this.
The first allegation here is one of sexual harassment. We have included allegations of calling female cast members sexy, touching and hugging them, and then becoming, quote, cold if they pull away, improvising intimacy that has not been coordinated, and adding in graphic sex scenes. They specifically talk about this adding in of an orgasm on camera, and it says, quote, Mr. Baldoni insisted he had added them, this orgasm on camera for Blake to do because he was making the film, quote, through the female gaze. He made a last-ditch attempt after she said she didn't want to do it to keep one in, where the couple orgasmed together on their wedding night, which he said was important to him because he and his partner climaxed simultaneously during intercourse. Mr. Baldoni then intrusively asked Miss Lively whether she and her husband climaxed simultaneously during intercourse. Now, the allegation is of sexual harassment. Baldoni's lawyers have previously told the BBC that the allegations made by Lively are categorically false. Does what I just read out meet the bar for sexual harassment?
What a great question, and here's the easiest way. So, indulge me if I try to explain this. There's something called hostile work environment. That is the umbrella. So when you're dealing with hostile work environment, you're trying to say the environment in itself is hostile. Now, to prove hostile work environment, you have to come into two subcategories. Either it's severe or something called pervasive pattern. First, you start with what's called pervasive pattern. If somebody has a protected characteristic, what that means is race, sex, age, disability, something like that, and they are saying that at work, the pattern at this workplace was so pervasively hostile that they kept doing little things. The examples you get is at the water cooler. Everybody are saying offensive jokes all the time. Everybody are saying racist jokes all the time. That the pattern at this workplace was so pervasively awful, we couldn't deal with it anymore. It created a hostile work. Now, it could be sexual, which is what she is saying. It could be racial. It could be all these other things. And so what she is saying and what you have just described is a situation that she said was so pervasive that you could not have a tolerable work environment, so something needed to be done. The other one is something called severe. Severe is you just got to prove one situation. So you can say it was not pervasive pattern. It was so awful that this one situation was of such a connotation that it makes it awful. What you may not realize that back in, make sure I get my time right, back in 1991, one of our current Supreme Court justices, Clarence Thomas, was trying to be confirmed to be on our Supreme Court. A young lady by the name of Ita Hill, who worked at the EEOC, came out and said, he had sexually harassed me for years. As a matter of fact, one day he put a Coke can on my counter and there was one of his pubic hairs on the Coke can and he talked to me about it. Exactly. The look you just gave is why I said that example, because that is a severe situation in which she could say it was so severe that anybody would have opened their eyes the same way you just did, Anushka, and it created such a hostile situation. And those are the two categories in which we try to determine if the workforce is so hostile that it can answer your question whether or not it could be sexual harassment.
What about intent? Does that play into it?
Absolutely. I love this topic. So first, the next thing they talk about with the elements is you have to prove that it is an unwelcomed sexual advance. Okay, of course, as you just said. And of course, when we determine the unwelcome sexual advance, it is an objective and a subjective standard. Subjective is what would a reasonable person in a similar situation have thought about what was happening between Justin and Blake? And then you go to the objective standard of what did Blake think personally? What did she think as a person in the situation? Because there is a disparity in power. Let's say, for example, a boss says, we were all joking, this was fun. Well, she works for him. An employee, she can say, it wasn't fun for me. You may have thought it was a joke, but for me, it was an awful situation. And so that becomes the hard part of these lawsuits is he will be saying, everybody was in on it, everybody was dealing it, and that's usually what happens. Everybody was joking, she was joking with us. Here are the text messages back and forth where we were joking. And then the other person on the other side says, I wasn't joking, I was uncomfortable, but I didn't want to lose my job. It's a very complicated legal issue that seems simple, but is more complicated.
And they do go a long way in setting up what the power dynamics were and outlining that she was technically working for Justin Baldoni at the time. He was her boss. Just going back to that Clarence Thomas example, mostly because I'm traumatized, but also I want to know what happened. Did this set a precedent for these severe acts of sexual harassment? Why is that something you specifically brought up?
This is when he was trying to become a Supreme Court justice. And these were the confirmation hearings back in 1991. She was at the confirmation hearing. She talked about the fact that he would talk about his sexual prowess at the work environment. He asked her out on multiple occasions. He described his anatomy. All of this came out in the hearings. What ended up happening is it created a much bigger light on the disparity in sexual harassment in the workforce. People started talking about that. So these public hearings became very public. People ended up watching it. He got confirmed. People were not believing Anita Hill. Some people were believing Anita Hill. But as a result, in our political spectrum, a lot more women got elected and more people started paying attention to sexual harassment in the workforce. And that's why we have these laws that we have now that really go out of their way to determine what happens at work.
I'm assuming he denied the allegations. No, did he deny them?
Absolutely. He completely denied the allegations. He said these were vehemently false, and he's still a justice to this day.
You're such a law nerd.
I am such a
love it.
dork.
It's like you press a button and it just comes out. It is amazing.
I'm such a dork.
But talking about the bar there, when this lawsuit came out, a lot of people picked up on the allegations around what was a birthing scene in the movie. It says, quote, Baldoni insisted to Miss Lively that women give birth naked. So it was not pre-agreed, she says in the script, that she would be naked or simulating nudity in this scene. He says that his wife had, quote, ripped her clothes off during labor. He claimed it was not normal for women to remain in their hospital gowns while giving birth. Miss Lively disagreed, but she felt forced into a compromise that she would be naked from below the chest down. So it then goes on to flesh out that during this scene, it was an open set. An open set means that people can walk in and out. There were a lot of people on a movie set. It was also broadcast on the monitors. There was no nudity rider and no intimacy coordinator. It says, quote, Miss Lively was partially nude from below the chest down with her legs spread wide in stirrups and only a small piece of fabric covering her genitalia. She became even more alarmed when Mr. Baldoni introduced his, quote, best friend to play the role of the OBGYN who would be delivering the baby. Miss Lively felt that the selection of Mr. Baldoni's friend for this intimate role in which the actor's face and hands were in close proximity to her nearly nude genitalia for a birth scene was invasive and humiliating. Once again, Justin Baldoni denies all of this, but a lot of people picked up on this when the lawsuit came out and they said that is terrible. How could this be allowed to happen? She's in such a vulnerable situation. But my question to you is, in the lawsuit, they keep saying this goes against industry standards and industry practices where you'd have a closed set. It wouldn't be broadcast on the monitors. Well, when you bring a civil claim, how much should we care about industry standards and industry practices? Are they legally binding or is it just a guideline?
It's a guideline. It may not be legally binding, but it shows the practices and policies on how things should happen. Industry standards can become the norm. We file a lot of lawsuits saying basically, you have violated your own policies. You have set these policies up for a reason. And now that you are violating them, you should be liable for everything that ends up happening. In this situation, she can remember we talk about the pervasive pattern, and this becomes interesting because this is on a shoot. She can say, this was my understanding on how things should be. This is what I signed up for. Because remember, one of the things you asked the question about that I thought was brilliant was the unwelcome sexual advance. How does she prove that she did not invite this? She signed on for a movie. We all saw the movie. She was in the movie. So how is this unwelcome? Well, it's unwelcome because I didn't sign on for the stuff you just added flippantly. I did not sign on for the things that you just decided we should do. This creates the pervasive pattern. I was expecting this. I'm a Hollywood actress. These are how things are happening. There should be an intimacy coordinator. There should be this person. We wear certain outfits so I'm not looked at as a sexual piece of meat, if you will. This is not a porn suit. This is a regular, but you just changed it to put your prurient interest in, and that's what has affected me, and that's what has become a pervasive pattern because it goes along with everything else that I've been claiming about. It's not just one act, it's so many. But she could almost make a claim, as you know now, that it was so severe that it traumatized me. It is the pubic hair on the Coke can. It makes people go, huh, I can't believe that happened.
Only on this podcast do we have the pubic hair on the Coke can as a saying. That's going to become a thing now. Thanks, Sean. But I want to talk about some other accusations in the lawsuit. If we remember, we're looking at sexual harassment, retaliation, breach of contract. We've got two things here that I'll just read out to you. Quote, Mr. Baldoni engaged in other behaviors that were shocking. On several occasions, he told Miss Lively that he had spoken to her recently deceased father. It goes on to outline that he said that he found $40 in his pocket, and this was because Blake had said that her father owed her money, so he was taking it even further, saying basically he communed with her dead dad, who he never met. Another accusation is, quote, Miss Lively was not given proper lactation breaks by Wayfarer during filming. That's the production company she's suing, which sometimes stretched into 6 hours without a break. The lack of accommodation for her need to express milk caused her to develop painful mastitis. To me, they sound more like endangerment, or you said hostile environment before, maybe forced labor. Why is that not one of the things they've officially put on the lawsuit, but these are included?
And remember, we talk about the protected characteristic that you have. Sex, race, so forth. And so if she's being treated to a hostile work environment based upon her sex, she's a woman, a man would not be treated in the same situation. That goes under the pervasive pattern.
Now, like you say, there are these accusations peppered throughout, and then there are the much larger instances that we went over, like the birthing scene. All of these, once again, Justin Baldoni, Wayfarer Studios, Jamie Heath, they deny all of this. Then we have the production strikes, the massive ones that Hollywood had for the writers and the actors. That happens in June 2023, and it goes on for many, many months. Then in January 2024, they're coming back to set. It's over, but Blake says, I will only agree to come back to this workplace if there are a list of demands that are met. And this includes things like no inappropriate touching, not entering her personal space, her trailer without asking her, etc. There's a whole host of them. Now, in the lawsuit, it says that she sat down with Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath and Wayfarer Studios and went through this, and they didn't object and they didn't question the veracity of her claims. That's what's alleged in the lawsuit. So they're back on set. She's got this agreement. The film is professional. It says that in the lawsuit. It wraps up. They're done. They're promoting it. She's out there doing the press rounds, doing her thing.
You know, this movie is such an opportunity, such a responsibility when you're servicing a group of people who care so much about the source material. And I really feel like we delivered a story that's emotional, and it's fun, and it's funny, and it's painful, and it's scary, and it's tragic, and it's inspiring, and that's what life is. It's every single color.
Now then we get into the second chunk of this lawsuit, which is really about retaliation, defamation of character, and what is referred to as astroturfing, where she alleges that Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, and Wayfarer Studios systematically tried to destroy her reputation. So we have Wayfarer engaging Melissa Nathan, TAG, which is an agency, TAJ, Mr. Wallace, and Street Relations on behalf of Mr. Baldoni to launch a retaliation campaign against Miss Lively. That's what they allege in the lawsuit. We know that they did start working together. That is a fact. Then in the lawsuit, it says that they are worried that the HR complaints that Blake had made she'd go public after the release of the film, and she'd get a lot of press, and this would end up destroying Justin Baldoni's reputation. Now, through discovery, Sean, can you just explain what discovery is really quickly?
When you file a lawsuit of any kind, if I were to sue the BBC, if I was to sue you, once you file a lawsuit, everything is fair game. There are no secrets. There are no surprises. So in a discovery, you can ask me for everything. You can say, well, Sean, you have filed a lawsuit against us. We want your text messages. We want your cell phone calls. We want your emails. We want to interview people who work with you. We want to talk to anybody who have ever made a thought about the BBC. And it goes the same way also towards you guys. So a discovery is the process where there are no secrets, where we know everything. And that's why people are always reticent to bring lawsuits, because we always advise them, when you bring a lawsuit, be ready, because nothing's offline. They can find out everything they want, and they don't need private investigators that get to ask you.
So why can't you just delete everything? I know I've got a bunch of incriminating emails, so I just delete them.
It's 2025. Is anything ever deleted? There are things in the cloud. There are and that ends up hurting. And don't forget, there's always a paper trail. Always.
And so throughout the other large chunk of this lawsuit, we see a lot of text messages between people working on Justin Baldoni's PR crisis management team. We see what's called a scenario planning doc that was circulated by TAG, the agency. And in this, they refer to key messaging points. This is in the event that Blake decides to go public about what she alleges she suffered on the set. One of the messaging points, it says that Justin Baldoni has a, quote, stellar reputation and he's a women's advocate. So to push that message, to push the message that production members lost their jobs due to Blake Lively's takeover of the film and insisted upon involvement, including loss of budget due to rescheduling shoot days when Blake Lively refused to show up. And then it says, explore planting stories about the weaponization of feminism and how people in Blake Lively's circle, like Taylor Swift, shout out to you, Taylor, have been accused of utilizing these tactics to, quote, bully people into getting what they want. Now, we're looking at an accusation of defamation and retaliation. Is the act of planting stories defamation or retaliation if those stories could potentially be true? Is the planting the issue, or would it be making up false claims?
Lots to unpack on what you just said. And so let's get the first answer. Could it possibly be defamation? Yes, but don't remember, the absolute defense to defamation is truth. And so just because it could be defamation, if someone says, well, it's true, it doesn't really matter, then that's the defense. That cancels defamation out, so whatever. So you can say defamatory conduct, but if it's true, then by definition, it's not defamation to begin with. And they're going to have a bigger issue is now we've gone through defamation for like 3 weeks in a row. Don't forget, because she is a public figure. So she has to be proven that this was done with actual malice to destroy her, which given her claims and given what she's saying is what she is saying and true in the document you're talking about, this is actually done with actual malice. And Justin will say, it's not with actual malice. It's to defend us because she's trying to ruin us, and it's going back and forth.
And there's also false light is one of the things she's alleging. What does that actually mean?
False light means, and it actually worked if you think about it, because if you've been watching this back and forth, she went from being, everybody thought she was wonderful to, ooh, I can't believe she did this. And so their concerted effort to make her look worse in the public eye is what she is claiming. They are putting me in a false light. They're talking about my famous friends. They're talking about me. They're saying that I'm a mean girl. They're saying I'm a Hollywood bully. They're making a concerted effort to make me look awful. They're creating a false narrative about me that's just not true. And that is hurting my character, my career, my monetary opportunities. And this is defamatory impact.
Okay, but one of the things that they're going to come back and say, and we know this because it's referenced in this document, is that she already had a bad reputation, they allege, and there were already pieces of media out there that didn't potentially portray her in the best light, interviews that she'd done where she didn't come across very well. If those already exist, so they didn't create them, it's not AI, but if they artificially bolstered them, reintroduced them back into the social algorithm and got them in front of everybody's faces again, could that be false light?
And that's basically what they're going to say. We can republish. It's the same way you can't stop me from going and searching stuff on the internet. You can't stop somebody from reposting stuff about you. We did not create this narrative. It was already there, is going to be the claim. And so that's going to be the going back and forth. And believe it or not, you actually hire experts who can do an internet dive and look at that and see how you were actually looked at. I think they talk about things when you talk about famous people of their Q scores. What is their score before this? What was their score after this? Did it go up? Did it go down? What did this do to their reputation?
Now, I want to talk about just two more things that are in there. One of them is an allegation of somebody overhearing something, and another is directly from discovery of text messages. We have Melissa Nathan, who works on the PR crisis team. She's talking to Jennifer Abel, who was also on that team, about this document. So they allege Justin Baldoni saw this PR crisis management document and he wasn't best pleased with it. He didn't feel that he was being very protected, and he communicated that in a text. Melissa Nathan, it says, from the messages they got through discovery, says, quote, when we send over docs, we can't send over the work we could do or would do because that would get us in a lot of trouble. We can't write, we will destroy her.
It's so bad because it takes away the nuance. That little sentence like that is we talk about discovering. That's why discovery is so important, is because you have that one quote and now you can run with it. You can exaggerate it. You're just like, well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it may not say this, but they have already shown that everything that they've done, they will not put in writing because they know that you will get it. They're going out of their way to make sure you don't know everything you need to know. We know their intent. We know they were going to destroy her. So these are the things we know. Imagine what we don't know. That's what's going to end up happening. It's going to be bad.
I mean, Justin Baldoni denies all of these allegations. So does Jamie Heath. They're not in that text chain. They could say, we didn't know about this. And then it becomes, a different story. But we also get another comment about you talking about power dynamics there, and they go a long way in fleshing this out. Justin Baldoni is her boss. She's working with this production company. They own the rights. Well, then we hear about monetary resources, because these things don't happen for free. These alleged astroturfing or the destruction of someone's reputation on social media, they say, quote, Baldoni was backed by virtually unlimited resources. Wayfarer's co-founder, co-chairman, and leading financier is multi-billionaire Steve Sarowitz, who divulged to a witness at the film's New York premiere that he was prepared to spend, quote, $100 million to ruin the lives of Miss Lively and her family.
Here's all I will say about that. It does sound strong in writing. It does sound strong in allegations, and it sounds like it is unfathomable and unbeatable. And I'm kind of not glad, but given the society we live in, don't forget where we were a year ago reading the allegations against Sean Combs before the lawsuit, and then we saw what was presented, and we're like, that ain't what you said. And that's what ends up happening. Remember, a lawsuit is just a lawyer writing his perception. He's going to write it on a slant. Like, he's going to write it on a slant from his side. And things are always different when they're presented in front of a jury. They always are.
Now, I've been telling you this whole time, Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, the CEO of Wayfarer Studios, they deny, and the others who are defendants in this lawsuit, they deny all of the allegations. But in January 2025, Baldoni actually sued Blake for civil extortion, defamation, and invasion of privacy. His attorney, Brian Friedman, said the actress and her partners had disseminated grossly edited, unsubstantiated, new and doctored information to the media. This was then thrown out by the judge, who said, well, actually, everything you're alleging that Blake is saying that's defaming you is stuff she said in her lawsuit, and that's privilege. Can you just explain that a little bit, Sean?
You cannot sue somebody for stuff that they put inside of a lawsuit, okay? Because what it would do is it would have chilling effects on individuals bringing lawsuits. So think about this. Let's say a true victim of molestation, rape, something of that nature, sues her accuser, and then the accuser said, well, I'm suing you back and I want multi-millions, and they say, I have $100 million back of me, that person would shirk away from their lawsuit. And that's what the judge said. We want people to be able to bring lawsuits. But the judge did open the window. He's like, if you find something else, bring it back. But this on its face is not defamation.
Now, we reached out to both Lively and Baldoni for comment. Baldoni's legal team, who also represent the other defendants, referred us to the legal documents where all the allegations have been denied. Previously, their attorney, Brian Friedman, called the claims false, outrageous, and intentionally salacious, and said Lively sought to control the film and her public image. We've not yet had a response back from Lively's team, but after a judge dismissed most of Baldoni's countersuit, her team called it a complete vindication. Sean, thank you so much for breaking this down. Now, this isn't the end of this case. We're following this one very, very closely, guys. I want your questions on this. I know you have them. This was really an in-depth introduction to what has been alleged by Blake Lively, because I've seen too much crap out there on social media. You are just chatting. You're chatting and you're chatting, and it's not right. It's not right. If I see one more AI generated video, I'm going to lose my mind. But please keep sending your questions in, and keep sending in your happy birthday messages to Sean, because it's his birthday. It's his birthday. Sean, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Much appreciate you.
That was our resident attorney, Sean Kent, joining us from South Carolina. Now I'm talking to the woman who wrote the first formal set of intimacy guidelines in 2015, Ita O'Brien. Hi, Ita.
Hi, Anushka. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Now, we've just been talking about the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, Wayfarer Studios lawsuit and others. And the term intimacy coordinator comes up a fair few times in that document. And it's certainly become more of a mainstream term after we had the Me Too movement. But for those, the uninitiated, what exactly is an intimacy coordinator?
An intimacy coordinator is a practitioner who puts in place professional process and procedures when working with intimate content. If you think about a stunt coordinator who puts in place, speaks to the director, trains the cast with good stunt techniques, and then choreographs the fight through to a really brilliant scene, we do exactly the same, but for the intimate content.
How coordinated are things? Because they've still got to look natural and steamy in some cases. Is it like my tongue goes left, your tongue goes right? What are we working with?
So we absolutely don't want to be that prescriptive. So we make sure that we serve the director's vision for what that writing is. And then as practitioners, then we invite that actor-director conversation about the script, reading the script, understanding character storytelling. Why is that scene there? How does it push the storytelling forward? And once you've journeyed through that interrogation of the script and that rehearsal, then everybody is making sure that they're serving character and telling the right physical story with whatever physicality they choose. And then we're checking out personally what people are comfortable with. So it might be a kiss and the director might want tongues, but somebody might say, actually, I've got a cold sore today. So it's not suitable to kiss because you've got a cold sore, as I say, not suitable to spread the herpes virus in your workplace.
I'd say that's safe advice, yes.
Yes, pretty much.
And so, I mean, it's so layered. People might not really understand how many thought processes have gone into that, from the top to the bottom and then back up again. I don't want this to sound, I've got this question, but I don't want it to sound immature, but if there's two actors you've never met before and they're going to do one of these scenes together, are you like, all right, you two need to go off and have a first kiss, or you need to have a first kiss in front of me? How do you do? I feel like I'm a child, but I want to know.
Good question, because those are all the questions that were there and that were hanging in the air before the role of the intimacy coordinator, and now we deal with that. So, actually, sort of very often when you do an intimate scene that includes kissing, then actually I will say, do you want to kiss in this agreement and consented touch, or do you want to wait until you get in front of the camera? Because do you want to save that, but knowing that both of you personally have agreed and consented to that lip-to-lip touch? Or sometimes people say, yes, I actually want to get over that lip-to-lip touch and that idea of consent. I always say your yes is your yes, your no is your no, and a place of maybe is a no. Because as soon as you're a place of maybe, you're not free and open as an artist to really give your best as a character. So that's where we only work really freely with what people are absolutely comfortable with. And then the idea of a kiss, like I say, what people's choices are as to what they do in rehearsals, but you know that everything that has happens in front of camera has been agreed and consented to, and then they can absolutely just serve character, serve storytelling, making a beautiful piece of art, a beautiful piece of storytelling that serves the production.
This question came up the most from my followers. I mean, you're probably going to know exactly what it is, but there's a sliding scale of intimacy that we see in different works of art. Some of it is like a peck, and some of it, I mean, is simulated sex that looks almost real. I guess that's the goal, is to make it look as real as possible. There are two people there with blood flowing through their veins. What happens if a male performer gets an erection? How do you deal with that?
So again, really lovely that you asked that question, because it used to be, again, that unspoken thing. So it's natural, it's normal. Our physiology and our physiognomy is that, if two people are moving together in a sexual manner, that someone might become aroused. It's just how the body responds. However, it's not suitable to have an erection in the workplace. And when we're on set or on stage, it's our place of work. So first of all, we now talk about it openly, saying, this might happen, but if it does, this is what we do. And what we do is we put in place a timeout. So we invite the cast to think of a word that they agree to together. It might be burgers, if someone's, desperate for a burger at the end of filming. It might be Wakanda, whatever it is. They choose.
I'm so sorry. What film have you been working on?
That was the actors. It wasn't me. They chose not just the word, but the action. Wakanda.
Oh, okay.
Timeout.
Sure. Why not? And the other one that came up a lot was around menstruation periods. What do you do? I mean, do you time it around an actress's cycle, or how does it work?
When we're on a production, I'll say to producers, find out your actor's menstrual cycle and see if we can then, particularly if it's full-on simulated sex scenes, choreograph the intimate content when they're not menstruating. However, schedules shift and change all the time, and people's menstrual cycles shift and change in their timings. And then what I might also say, and we will need more breaks so the actress can freshen up. And again, it's just wonderful, because it means that actor can, when a time that they might feel a bit more anxious about filming an intimate scene, they can take a breath, feel personally taken care of. So again, we can support them to have a really good day on set.
And you mentioned that before intimacy coordinators were an accepted practice. It was kind of no man's land. People didn't know what to bring up, what to say. Now there are a set of practices you can expect on a film set. I know you've got some visual aids. I know you've got some props with you. Can you talk me through those props and how they help keep it a safe environment?
So first of all, especially if there's simulated sex, it really helps to not necessarily have genitalia touching. So we start with cushions like this. This is a triangular shaped cushion that we would put, you would say, wear comfortable clothes. So put that down your tracksuit bottom, so it gives a barrier. So again, you're feeling more comfortable, sat, sort of in close proximity to somebody else. Perhaps if one character sat across someone, we've got this one that's a banana shape. And again, we make them in different colours of skin tone so that everybody's honoured with what their skin tone is.
That's a big banana.
That's a big banana. Oh, yes.
Amen.
If you think of it, it's a lap cushion in the shape of a banana. So those are those things. And then, of course, we have modesty garments. So it's not suitable for naked genitalia ever to touch, again, in the workplace. So if there's a simulated sex scene that has a version of, a degree of nakedness, you'd start with the least is wearing what's, called shibu, which is basically like a G-string, but with the sides cut out, and it sticks just above the pubic line, and then it sticks in between the buttocks or into the small of the back. And then you have one that's for the man, that's called the hibu, that has a little bit more, material. And with those, we normally invite the person with the penis to be wearing a pouch. So you put your penis and your testes into it, and then you put that over the top, so that holds everything in place, but also holds it so that they feel really comfortable to move. And then for women with breasts, then also the choice as to whether they have naked nipples or if the nipples are covered. We have this wonderful thing called nipple daisies that really help, sort of, so the nipple is covered. So if you're pressing against someone, it again just really helps people to feel professional. And then the intimacy cushions that I always say, I think of them like the stunt coordinators' crash mats.
This could happen to any woman, and it is happening to 1 in 5 women, and that's really scary. I was hacked, stalked, harassed, and impersonated. It was a period of absolute hell for me. The story kicks off at a very glamorous London Fashion Week setting. I was getting the coffee.
But you were hanging out in this very, very glamorous kind of environment, right?
Yeah, I was living the dream. I was clueless and innocent, and it was in this very glamorous London Fashion Week setting where I was an intern having the time of my life that I met a man who is actually at the center of this story.
Just one final question. This is so fascinating, but you're obviously working with actors now, actors and actresses. Like I said, this is an industry standard now. Have they spoken to you about what it was like before and perhaps the difficulties?
Oh, I mean, whenever I do a workshop, I've actually just ran a weekend workshop this weekend just gone, and I always start with asking my participants, when have you worked with intimacy when it's been done well? When has it not been done well? And therefore what you want to get out of the workshop. And, nearly everybody has a story of scenes not being done well. And one particular actress on this weekend said she has never had an experience of working on an intimate scene where it's being done well. So again, more education is needed to go. It's about the intention. The Intimacy Onset guidelines are printed. They're up on the Intimacy Onset website. Intentionally, they're there for anybody to go to. Please go to them, read them, and then put it in place so that you work with that intention of not missing out that intimate moment, to interrogate it, to talk about it, and no longer leaving it as this unspoken thing and this elephant in the room that leaves an actor vulnerable.
Ita, thank you so much for breaking that down for us today and bringing your amazing props.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me.
That was Ita O'Brien, Intimacy Coordinator. Now, don't forget, you can get in touch with us on WhatsApp at +44 330 678 114. That's +44 330 678 114. Let us know your questions or thoughts on who we should be talking about. That's it for this episode of Fame Under Fire from BBC Sounds with me, Anushka Matanda Doughty. Make sure you subscribe to BBC Sounds on YouTube so you never miss a thing.